All right, let's jump right in, shall we? You know ancient Greece, you know myths and legends, and you know we love to dig into the good stuff you send our way. This time, we're diving into the world of Dionysus. You've given us some amazing sources on this god, and, well, let's just say I'm ready to uncork some serious knowledge here. He may be known for wine and revelry, but I have a feeling there's so much more of this god than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. Dionysus, he's a fascinating paradox, really. He embodies celebration and ecstasy, sure, but he's also very much connected to suffering, transformation, even death. It's a wild combination.
Yeah, so let's unpack that a bit. When you look at the material, what aspects of Dionysus really stand out to you? Where should we start?
Well, one thing that immediately jumps out at me, it's his link to easing suffering, bringing joy. It's like he really understood on a fundamental level that human need for release, that need to experience pure bliss, even if it's just for a moment.
Right, right. It's not just about partying for the sake of it, is it? It's deeper. It's about finding a way to transcend the hardships of life, to find some kind of escape.
Exactly. And this ties directly into his connection to theater, actually. Dionysus was considered the driving force behind its development, inspiring those early playwrights, the actors. Imagine that.
Wow, yeah. To think our love for storytelling, for performance, might be linked to this one god. From ancient Greek tragedies to, I don't know, Broadway musicals, his influence still felt today.
Absolutely. And there's even more. He was also seen as a bridge between the living and the dead. His followers, the Maenads, they would perform rituals specifically to nourish the souls of the departed. Pretty powerful
Oh,
stuff.
wow. That's a side of Dionysus I honestly haven't thought much about before. It adds a whole new dimension to him.
And then on top of all of this, we have this whole concept of Dionysus as a dying and rising god, a motif that, well, you see it pop up in various cultures and religions throughout history. It is powerful. It's a powerful concept, and it's something we'll definitely come back to, particularly when we talk about his multiple birth narratives. But first, I think we need to address a common misconception. The idea that Dionysus was like a late addition to the Greek pantheon, the sources you sent. They challenge that assumption quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Things are already getting interesting. So what are these sources suggesting then?
Well, the evidence points to his worship possibly existing as far back as 1500 to 1100 BC, potentially even predating the worship of some of the major Olympian gods. That's a long time ago.
Hold on. Are you saying he might be older than some of the big names?
Yeah.
That,
Okay.
like, the major players? That's a surprise. So where exactly do we see these early traces of his worship?
There are some really intriguing connections to the Mycenaean civilization and even some hints, tantalizing hints from Minoan Crete. His roots, they might run much deeper than, well, than we initially thought.
Okay, so we're talking ancient history here. Fascinating. So let's talk about his name, Dionysus. What can we learn from its etymology?
Well, the Dio prefix, that points straight to his father, Zeus. No surprises there. But the Nusos part, that's where things get interesting. It could be connected to Mount Nysa, his mythical birthplace, and the nymphs who raised him, the Nysiads.
So we have Zeus as the father and a possible connection to a mountain. I mean, that sounds like a pretty dramatic origin story even before we get to the whole multiple births situation. But what about that Nusos part? Anything else we should know about it?
There's actually a theory that Nysa, it might be an archaic word for tree, which would add, well, another layer of symbolism. It would connect Dionysus to nature, to vegetation.
Okay, we have Zeus, mountains, trees. This is building quite the picture here. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's unpack the many names he was known by. I feel like each one might reveal a different aspect of his personality, of his role in Greek mythology. It's like each name tells a different part of his story.
Yeah, you're right. His epithets, they really do offer a glimpse into the diverse ways he was perceived, how he was worshipped. For example, Akratophorus translates to giver of unmixed wine. It speaks to the potent, the unadulterated nature of his gifts.
So it's not watered down wine we're talking about here. It's the real deal, the pure, powerful essence, right? What other names stand out to you?
Let's see. Well, we have Bessarius, which is derived from the fox skin worn by his followers. This one evokes a kind of, I don't know, wild animalistic energy that was associated with his worship.
I just imagine it,
Yeah.
the frenzy, the rituals, the raw, untamed power of those celebrations. What else? What else is there?
We also have Bromios, meaning roaring. It links him to the untamed forces of nature, perhaps even echoing the thunder of his father, Zeus. And then, of course, there's Demeter, twice born, which directly foreshadows those intriguing birth narratives we'll be exploring later on.
So many names, so many aspects of this god. It's clear that Dionysus was, well, he was a multifaceted figure.
He is. He is. Each name reflects a different part of his worship, the many roles he played in Greek society. Speaking of worship, we can't forget the Dionysian festivals. They were legendary. The sources you provided, they describe these events in, well, in pretty vivid detail.
I do love a good celebration, so
Yeah.
let's hear about these festivals. What made them so special? What went on?
Well, the most famous were the Dionysia. You had the rural Dionysia, which was a more, I'd say, rustic celebration held during the winter months. This festival involved processions with, how do I put this delicately? Let's just say some very symbolic imagery, including phalluses.
Okay, that's certainly one way to celebrate fertility.
Yeah.
So we have rustic processions in the winter. Sounds like a unique experience, to say the least. What about the rest of the year, though? Were there other celebrations?
In the spring, they held the city Dionysia in Athens. This was a much grander affair. It eventually evolved to include theatrical competitions, becoming, a major cultural event. And then there's the Anthesteria. This one had a bit of a more somber tone to it, connected to the souls of the dead.
Huh, that's interesting. So Dionysus could be at the center of both wild revelry and solemn remembrance. He really did run the gamut of human experience, didn't he? But we've talked about the public-facing festivals. What about the more secretive side of his worship? The stuff that wasn't for everyone?
Ah, that brings us to the Bacchic mysteries. They were, well, central to his cult, you could say, but their origins are a bit shrouded in mystery.
Ooh, a mystery. Now you've got my attention. What clues do we have about these mysteries? Where do we even begin?
Well, Orpheus, the legendary musician and poet, he's often credited as a possible founder, which adds, an extra layer of intrigue to the whole thing. And some scholars even suggest that there might be connections, intertwining connections between the Dionysian and Orphic mysteries. It gets complicated.
So what exactly did these mysteries involve? What kinds of rituals were people performing? Give me the details.
While the exact details, they do remain somewhat elusive, we do know that animal sacrifice was a key element, along with masked dances and the use of symbolic objects, things like wooden masks and pillars.
I'm picturing torchlight, chanting, a real sense of the sacred.
Absolutely. And the belief was that Dionysus's presence could actually be embodied within those ritual objects. Imagine that. It would have intensified the experience, creating a direct connection with the divine, a pretty powerful concept.
Okay, so I think we're finally ready to tackle those multiple birth narratives that make Dionysus so unique. We touched on them earlier, and honestly, I'm really eager to hear the different versions to see how they all fit together. Where should we start with this?
All right, let's begin with the first birth, the one described in the Orphic tradition. In this version, Dionysus is the son of Zeus and, well, Persephone.
Wait, Persephone, the queen of the underworld. That's an unexpected pairing, to say the least.
Yes. And in this version, he's brutally dismembered by the Titans. But then, and this is key, he's reborn. It's this incredibly powerful symbol of resurrection, of renewal, a theme that really resonates throughout all of his mythology. Now hold on, because there's another version, an even more dramatic account, told by the poet Non-Monsterinus. It adds another layer to this whole story of origins.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more about this other version. What makes it so different?
So Non-Fornus, he describes Zeus actually taking the form of a serpent to be with Persephone. And from this union, they have a son, Zagreus, another name for this first Dionysus. But even as an infant Zagreus, he showed signs of, well, challenging Zeus's authority. And the Titans, they feared his potential power, you see, so they dismembered him. And this act, according to Non-Fornus, it plunged the world into chaos, a pretty dramatic turn of events.
Zeus is a serpent, a power struggle, a world in chaos. It sounds like this story is packed with symbolism and deeper meaning. It makes you think, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But remember, this is just the first birth. The narratives we find in Hyginus and Onus, they introduce a second birth. Equally dramatic and surprising, I'd say. They describe how Zeus impregnated Semele, a mortal princess, with, get this, the heart of the first Dionysus.
He used the heart of the first Dionysus. Wow, that's just, I don't know, it's mind-blowing. What was the purpose of that? Why go to such lengths?
It seems to connect the two incarnations, suggesting a cyclical nature to Dionysus's existence. Death and rebirth, a recurring theme in his story.
So what happened with Semele? Knowing Greek mythology, I can't imagine it ended well for her.
You're right on that. Hera, Zeus's notoriously jealous wife, she tricked Semele. She convinced her to demand that Zeus reveal his true, godly form to her. And, well, no mortal could survive such a sight.
So Semele was.
Consumed by divine fire. It's a tragic end, really. But Zeus, he managed to rescue the infant Dionysus from the flames, saved him at the last minute.
A dramatic rescue. But where did Dionysus go from there? Was he raised by nymphs again, like the first time around?
This time was different. Zeus, he actually sewed the infant Dionysus into his own thigh. Can you imagine?
His thigh. That's a strange image, a striking image. Why do that? What's the significance?
It really emphasizes Dionysus's unique birth, being born, in a sense, directly from Zeus himself. This second birth, it solidifies his connection to both the divine and the mortal realms. He's this bridge between worlds.
It's fascinating how these birth narratives, they blend elements of tragedy and triumph. There's a real sense of duality there.
They really do highlight the complex and paradoxical nature of this god, and that complexity it's further revealed in the stories of Dionysus's travels and trials. As he sought recognition as a god, it was a journey of self-discovery in a way.
It sounds like his journey was full of adventure, full of challenges. Tell me more about that. What did he encounter along the way?
Picture this. Dionysus, he leads an expedition to India, a land of exotic wonder at the time. And while he was there, he introduced the art of winemaking to the people, sharing his knowledge, bringing a touch of civilization to that faraway land.
Ah, so that's where the association of Dionysus with spreading wine and viticulture comes from. It all makes sense now.
Exactly. But when he returned to Greece, things weren't quite as smooth. He faced resistance, you see. People who doubted his divinity. They refused to accept him as a god. It must have been frustrating.
So he had to prove himself, didn't he? Were there any specific individuals he clashed with? Anyone who really tested his patience?
He had conflicts with several figures, actually, but his encounters with Pentheus and Lycurgus, those are prime examples of what happens when you deny Dionysus and his power. You don't want to get on his bad side.
Pentheus. That name rings a bell. Didn't his story have a rather, well, tragic ending?
Indeed. In Euripides' play The Bacchae, Pentheus, the ruler of Thebes, he refused to acknowledge Dionysus as a god, tried to suppress the ecstatic worship of his followers, the Maenads. And this defiance, well, it led to Pentheus' downfall. It's a cautionary tale.
So what happened to him? What was his fate?
Driven mad by Dionysus, Pentheus was lured to Mount Cithaeron, where he climbed a tree, you see, to spy on the Maenads. But in their frenzy, they mistook him for a wild beast, and they tore him apart. A gruesome end.
Wow, that's a powerful story. And a disturbing one. It really makes you think about the nature of Dionysus's power, the consequences of underestimating him. There's a dark side there.
It definitely underscores the dangers of denying the divine, and the potent forces at play in the Dionysian mysteries. They're not to be trifled with. Like Lycurgus, the Thracian king, he's another figure who learned a harsh lesson about challenging the god of wine.
Okay, what's Lycurgus' story? How did he cross Dionysus?
When Lycurgus discovered that Dionysus was in his kingdom, he imprisoned the Maenads. Dionysus, he fled. But before leaving, he unleashed a drought upon the land, led to a revolt against Lycurgus.
So Dionysus used his power to punish Lycurgus, but not directly, right? It's like he orchestrated events to bring about Lycurgus' downfall, a more subtle approach.
Exactly. He often worked through nature, through human actions, rather than brute force. And in his madness, Lycurgus, he tragically killed his own son. He mistook him for a patch of ivy, a plant sacred to Dionysus, of course. It's a tragic irony.
These stories are both captivating and, well, a bit frightening. They reveal a side to Dionysus that's often overlooked, I think, his power to punish, the potential for chaos associated with his worship.
It's a good reminder that the Greek gods, they weren't just benevolent beings. They embodied the full spectrum of human experience, including the darker aspects, the shadows, you might say. But alongside these tales of conflict and punishment, we also have a story that emphasizes Dionysus' compassion, his determination, his journey to retrieve his mother, Semele, from the underworld.
We talked about that earlier, and it does sound like a classic hero's quest, but this time with a deeply personal motivation. What can you tell me about this journey? What challenges did he face?
There are several versions of the story, but they all highlight Dionysus' desire to reunite with his mother, to bring her back to the world of the living. It wasn't an easy task, let me tell you. He faced many dangers. He even needed the help of Heracles to subdue Cerberus, the fearsome guardian of the underworld.
So he journeyed to the realm of the dead, faced terrifying creatures, and all for the love of his mother. It's a powerful image. But did he succeed? Did he bring her back?
He did. He returned from the underworld with Semele, renaming her Thyone, and they ascended together to Mount Olympus, where she took her place among the gods. A happy ending, for once.
What a triumphant ending. It's almost as if this journey, it represents not only Semele's rebirth, but also Dionysus' full acceptance into the Olympian pantheon. He proved his lineage, his power, his devotion. It's a coming-of-age story in a way.
You've hit the nail on the head. It completes his transformation. From a god of uncertain origins and contested divinity to a fully recognized member of the divine family, he earned his place.
This journey through the myths of Dionysus has been incredible. We've covered his multiple births, his epic travels, his clashes with mortals, and his descent into the underworld. It's amazing how these stories can be both entertaining and thought-provoking, isn't it?
They are. They offer a window into the beliefs, the values of ancient Greece. They reveal their understanding of the divine, of the human condition. It's a different way of seeing the world.
And they also raise questions about our own relationship to pleasure, to suffering, to the power of belief. They're still relevant today.
That's the beauty of mythology. It continues to resonate with us across centuries, prompting us to contemplate the enduring themes of life, death, and transformation. Themes that are universal, really. But, we're not quite finished yet. We still have some fascinating aspects of Dionysus to explore, including his, shall we say, captivating love affairs and the legacy he left behind. There's more to uncover.
Oh, I'm definitely curious to hear about those love affairs. A god as charismatic as Dionysus. He must have had some interesting romantic entanglements. We need all the details.
Let's just say he wasn't exactly known for his fidelity.
Let's talk about the god of wine's love life.
Ah, yes, his romantic escapades. They are as fascinating and, well, as varied as other aspects of his mythology. He was, shall we say, not exactly known for sticking to just one partner.
So let's hear it. Tell me about some of his more notable love affairs. When you look at the material, what really stands out? What stories caught your eye?
Well, the story of Ariadne, that one is particularly intriguing. She was the daughter of King Minos of Crete, and you might remember she helped the hero Theseus navigate the labyrinth and defeat the Minotaur. But Theseus, well, he abandoned her on the island of Naxos, left her there all alone.
Oh, yeah, I remember that story. Theseus, he wasn't exactly known for his loyalty. Poor Ariadne, what a terrible thing to do.
It is, and it's in this moment of despair, that Dionysus enters the picture. He finds her there on Naxos, and they fall in love and get married.
Oh, it's a classic tale. A god rescuing a heartbroken maiden. Very romantic.
It is, and their story became a symbol of transformation, new beginnings. Some accounts even say that Dionysus placed Ariadne's crown among the stars, creating the constellation Corona.
Wow, a truly cosmic love story. That's beautiful. But you mentioned earlier that not all of his relationships were so, well, idyllic. Were there any that were less harmonious, where things didn't go so smoothly?
Oh, yes, definitely. The stories of Aura and Nicaea, those offer a different perspective on Dionysus. In these accounts, Dionysus's pursuit of these nymphs, it involves, well, a degree of trickery and deception. And things, well, they don't end well for either woman.
So even a god associated with joy and liberation, even he has a darker side to his romantic pursuits. It's interesting how these myths, they challenge our expectations, don't they? They remind us that even the gods, they were flawed beings, just like us.
Absolutely. They reflect the complexities of human emotions, of relationships, the potential for love and pain. Dionysus, just like the other Greek gods, he embodied that full spectrum of human experience, both the good and the bad.
So true. Looking back at everything we've talked about today, everything we've learned about Dionysus, what stands out to you as the most important takeaway? What is it about him that continues to fascinate us, centuries later? Why is he still relevant?
For me, I think it's his ability to embrace paradox, to embody those contradictions. He's a god of joy and sorrow, of ecstasy and suffering, of life and death. He challenges us to look beyond simple categories, to recognize the interconnectedness of seemingly opposite forces.
That's a great point. He really does remind us that life itself, it's full of contradictions, isn't it? We experience moments of intense joy, but also periods of darkness, of despair. It's all part of the journey.
And Dionysus, he seems to be suggesting that maybe these seemingly opposite experiences, maybe they're not actually separate at all. Maybe they're just two sides of the same coin. He encourages us to find that balance, between order and chaos, between restraint and abandon, to embrace it all.
I love that. He's not just about letting loose, indulging in pleasure. He's also about recognizing the transformative power of facing those darker emotions, our fears, our mortality, facing it head on.
Exactly. He challenges us to embrace the fullness of life, with all its complexities and contradictions, to find the beauty in it all.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for guiding us through this exploration of Dionysus. It's been truly enlightening.
The pleasure was all mine, truly. Hopefully this conversation has, sparked your curiosity, encouraged you to keep exploring this world of Greek mythology. It's vast, it's rich. There's always more to learn.
Absolutely. Listeners, we encourage you to keep digging. Read more about Dionysus, delve into other Greek myths, see what resonates with you. There's always more to discover, more layers to uncover, more connections to be made. And who knows, you might even find some insights that connect these ancient stories to your own life, your own experiences. That's the beauty of it all.